Close your eyes and surrender to your darkest dreams. Purge all thoughts of the life you knew before. Hello and welcome to my review of It, the novel by Stephen King. And today we're going to be taking a look at Chapter 20, entitled Unnecessary Vocal Effects. Just kidding. The title of the chapter is The Circle Closes. And I will say right off the bat, I like this chapter. I was pretty invested in it. This is sort of a case where the story is just being continued, and you feel the urge to just keep reading on and on and on and not stopping, but I am doing a video by video review of each chapter, so I did stop, and I'm just doing the review now, but I did feel very, very invested in the chapter. It was well written. So there are 6 sections in this chapter, and I'm going to just go section by section and talk about what I liked in each one. So here we go. This first section is entitled Tom, and unsurprisingly, we're following Tom, Bev's husband. This is a really weird one because it combines the perspectives of multiple characters and it builds a pretty good narrative, I think. So what's going on is Tom is having this nightmare where he is thinking about killing his own father. And the story plays out and it becomes very obvious that he's experiencing the story of what happened to Henry's father. I had to remember his name. Why did I have to remember that? Henry's father. That moment where Henry used the switchblade to kill his father. And then he also goes back to the perspective of Henry when he is with Belch and he is with Victor when he's pursuing the kids down there. So we learn that Victor, Belch, and Henry are actually pursuing the kids down in the tunnel. And this perspectives changed from one to the other in Tom's dream. Interestingly, though, the things that we find out happening... The things that we find out that happened to the kids, that happened to Belch, and that happened to Victor, those have already happened to them in this dream, and they're dead corpses walking next to Henry. And this really scares Tom, and it wakes him up. And interestingly, he has this voice in his head, I think. If I'm remembering the timing of this correctly. He has this voice in his head, and it's Pennywise's voice, and it's basically telling him, "It doesn't matter who you are. The point is that Beverly's up ahead." And he wants Tom to get her, basically. And he also has this moment where he's sort of remembering that he's experiencing this rage at Beverly, and he starts using the same phrases that Beverly's father used. So it's almost like all of these people are being controlled by the same thing. All of these people are being controlled by the same mindset, which is Pennywise. That's what it seems like. And he says to him, "Follow the bouncing ball." And I don't really know what that means, but at some point, this orb comes out of the bathroom and points to the direction that he's supposed to go out of the room, and he's supposed to go find them, and it's 3 a.m. Interestingly, in the dream, also, there were balloons floating in these sewers that were guiding the path so that they could follow the kids. So Tom is very clearly having these nightmares and being directed to go find Bev and the rest of them as they go down into the tunnel. And, of course, they're going down into the tunnel at the same time as their older selves, because in the chapter that we just read, they're going down in the tunnels, and at the end of this chapter, they're going down in the tunnels. So we're getting that nice temporal parallel right there. And that's the end of that chapter. I was very invested by the end of this. I was just wanting to see what was going to happen because I thought it's about time we go back to Tom. So that brings us to the end of the first section. Second section is entitled Audra, and this one is similar to Tom's, but it is different also. Audra finds herself very much on the other side of this because she has a nightmare as well. But in this nightmare, she's Bev, and she's scared of what's chasing them from behind in the tunnels. She wakes up from this nightmare after she sees something in these tunnels. She comes to this crate that's got this symbol on it, and it gives her this anxiety, and she wakes up from the nightmare, and she hears this voice in her head, just like Tom did. And the voice says, "We all float down here, Audra." And she realizes that this voice is coming from the drain, and the bathroom door opens, and I think this orb comes out and pops. And there's the scary part where it's talking about how this voice continues to sound like the gurgling of a drain. It goes, "We all float down here, Audra." And hearing that in the audiobook, I know I might have made it sound sort of lame right there, but it was freaking me out when I heard it. And then she gets up and tries to run from the room, And the TV comes on, and she sees Pennywise flinging around the head of this person that she knew. I'm not sure if it was one of her lovers or if it was the director. I'm not sure. But she sees Pennywise flipping this head around by the hair on the TV, and she runs out of the room because it's freaking her out. And she puts her back against the door, and then one of the fingers of Pennywise comes from under the door and touches her heel, and she sees the fingers going all crazy under the door. And she just runs out of the hall and tries to go back and find where Bill is in the townhouse. Yes, Bill is Audra's husband. I had to remember that for a minute. She had this moment where she tried to call the townhouse and they didn't answer, and she thought maybe he's having an affair, which he totally was. And she runs out to the parking lot to get into her car to try to go find Bill, and Audra meets Tom, and Tom grabs her and he says, "Haven't I seen you in the movies?" or something like that. Something that a villain would say, an intimidating line or something like that. Because if you recall, he knew what Audra looked like, and they're going to try to apparently track them down or something like that. I don't really know. Well, I do know what happened at the end of the chapter, but I'll get to that when I get to that in the last section. But this was actually pretty frightening. I got the spookilies while I was reading this, so that was cool. Sections 3, 4, and 5, I'm going to do all of those together. The first one was called Eddie's Room, and I don't have anything after that written, but all of 3 of these sections follow the main characters, so I'm just going to go ahead and talk about all of them. So Bill and the others go up to Eddie's room. Of course, they see the body of Henry lying there on the ground. I'm more sure at this point that he's dead, but the fact that they didn't call anyone makes me think that he might get up at some point. So they're all together, and they're wondering what's happened to Mike, and they call the library. They're wondering what happened to Mike because they call the library, and no one answers at first. Mike does not answer. Excuse me. They call the library, and the police officer answers, and they realize that Mike's been hurt by Henry, and he's been taken to the hospital, and that he's in critical condition. And at this point, they're all sort of solemn. I liked this moment later when Richie had to make this call to the hospital, and he pretended to be a reporter, and he was miming these gestures and sort of getting into the role of a reporter, and then as soon as he hung up the phone, he felt a lot of despair. But all of them were together, and they had a moment where they all were together sort of holding hands, I think that happened. Them being together there for each other, that was a sweet moment. I know I've said that before about other sections, but I liked that. So they all get into the car, and they head down to the Barrens because they make this decision that they need to go ahead and head down there and take this monster on once and for all. They decide not to involve the police because basically Bill says once we involve the outside world, then we're inviting trouble for ourselves, because Bev is remembering Bill saying that the town is Derry. The town very much is Derry, and everyone's sort of working against their interest in that town by either ignoring them or actively fighting them, so they don't want to involve anyone. They decide to go down there. We get this pretty horrible moment on the radio where it's playing, and then Pennywise talks into the radio, and he's talking about these DJs, and he said, "We have right here Georgie Denbrough," and then Georgie's on the radio saying, "It killed me, Bill. I thought it was a monster. I thought it was in the cellar, but it was in the drain." And that was pretty horrible. And then Richie snaps off the radio, and obviously he's flustered, but he's trying to keep the mood light. That seems like a very Richie thing to do. I liked that. I didn't like that happened, but I like Richie's response to that. So they're all going down into the Barrens, and then that brings us to section 6, and that is entitled In the Barrens. When they get down to this, when we get to this section, when they get down to the Barrens, they discover that things are much the same, but also kind of different. There are some structures around the Barrens that weren't there before, and the clearing is gone, but they do find one of the doors that they used a portion of to make the window, so maybe that clubhouse is still there, who knows. The interesting thing, I know I say that a lot too, but interesting thing, Ben goes to cross the Kenduskeag, and he almost steps into it. Or he goes to walk next to the Kenduskeag, and he almost steps into it, and Bill has to grab him and stop him from walking into it. And I was thinking, didn't that happen before, either with Bill and Ben or Bill and Mike during that vision? I don't really remember who was in that vision. Anyway, they go down there, they find that the cover is off, and that it's been freshly taken off, and they notice something under the cover to the Morlock hole, and they lift it up, and they discover none other than Audra's purse. And Bill is in this frantic state, and actually he has this moment where he doesn't stutter for a minute, where he's asking, who's got her? And then he remembers himself again, and he starts stuttering again. So it's almost like this thing that's taking his memories, causing him not to stutter again, which is interesting. And we end the chapter with them all going down into the Morlock hole again to face the monster. So I was pretty much held in suspense. Also, I forgot to mention this, but Eddie's arm was messed up, and so Bill had to carry him down again, so it's very much paralleling last time. But they go down there, but then it gets brought to the attention of the audience that Bill does know that the Pennywise is named Robert Gray, but he also doesn't remember what they did or how they beat it. So they're basically going down there with no knowledge of how to beat it, just like last time. So the parallels are, again, really cool. But yeah, I'm going to be reading this next chapter soon. I like this chapter, but it did seem very much like a transitional chapter. Like, not really much happened. It was just sort of a point A to point B type thing. We just needed to set the actions in motion. I'm trying to fill this space with talking to see if I forgot to mention anything, and I do not think I did. I guess if I forgot anything, like I said, I could mention it next chapter. But I think I covered everything. Just to sum up, those nightmare sections, they freaked me out. I like how Stephen King's using all these different portions of the story to tell the same narrative. Bev's father, and then Henry, and then Beverly being the one who is the vessel for Audra to know what's going on. And it seems like all of this is being orchestrated. I was going to have a prediction that maybe Audra will end up being the 7th person, because they needed 7 people last time, and they don't think they can do it without 7. And I thought maybe Audra would replace Stan, but then Mike is in critical now, so is Mike going to be the 7th element from the hospital? Who knows? Is he going to phone it in? Is he going to socialize from the quarantined area? Who knows? Who really knows? I guess we'll find out. But again, I'm hoping the next section is a little bit longer, the next chapter, because this one seemed pretty short. Overall, though, like this. That was pretty good. So that's really all I have to say. I'm done rambling now. If you like this video, be sure to like this... No, if you like this content, be sure to like this content, because I'll be making more of it. And if you want to see more videos like this, then you can go ahead and subscribe and push all notifications so that you, hopefully, will be notified every time that I make something. Because I like to make Stephen King videos. This is a philosophy channel. All kinds of cool stuff that I'm going to be doing in the near future. So, all that's there. In the meantime, I'll see y'all next time, and have a fantabulous day. Bye-bye.